Thank you for joining me to honor the life and legacy of one of America's most thoughtful and principled leaders, President Jimmy Carter. Yesterday, December 29, 2024, we lost a remarkable man, a Nobel laureate, humanitarian, and advocate for justice whose contributions to the world endured long after his presidency. President Carter was a leader who believed in the power of moral responsibility, systemic interdependence, and the strength of societal cohesion. Tonight, I'd like to revisit one of his most profound moments, the crisis of confidence speech, delivered on July 15, 1979. This was a speech born in a time of national uncertainty, a moment when inflation and an energy crisis weighed heavily on the American psyche. But what makes Carter's words so resonant even today is that they go far beyond the immediate context of that moment. They address fundamental questions about trust, responsibility, and identity, questions that still shape our world. Faith, accountability, and national identity. Carter began his speech with a sobering observation. America was suffering not just an energy crisis, but a crisis of confidence. He argued that this wasn't merely about a lack of resources or political solutions. It was about something deeper, the erosion of trust between citizens and their government, and the fragmentation of a shared national purpose. He pointed out how intertwined these three elements are. When citizens lose faith in their government, it becomes harder for leaders to be accountable. Without accountability, the very idea of a national identity, a unifying purpose that binds people together, begins to unravel. Carter saw these as mutually dependent forces. Citizens' trust enables government action affirms trust, and together they sustain the identity of the nation itself. Even now, we see echoes of this dynamic. Around the world, misinformation, polarization, and institutional inaction have weakened the ties that hold societies together. How do we rebuild trust in such a fragmented environment? Carter's speech offers clues. He called for transparency, shared values, and civic engagement. Solutions like citizen assemblies, where ordinary people directly shape policy, can foster collaboration and accountability, rebuilding the very fabric of society. Carter didn't stop at diagnosing the problem. He painted a picture of how faith, action, and unity could reinforce one another to create positive change. He highlighted energy independence as an example of this virtuous cycle. He argued that personal responsibility, things like conserving energy or making sacrifices, could inspire government leadership. In turn, strong government action would foster national unity, and that unity would restore the public's faith in their own power to effect change. He spoke about a loss of a unity of purpose in the nation, linking it directly to people's personal disillusionment. But Carter believed this cycle could be reversed. The pandemic, for instance, reminded us how tightly public trust, effective leadership, and a sense of shared purpose are interwoven. When governments aligned their actions with the public's values, trust grew. When they faltered, divisions widened. Today, policymakers must not only solve problems but also rebuild this cycle of reinforcement by prioritizing both immediate action and long-term faith. One of the most striking aspects of Carter's speech was how he tied individual actions to systemic outcomes. He made it clear that solving the energy crisis wasn't just about policy, it was about morality. He asked Americans to reflect on their own habits, suggesting that self-indulgence and consumption were part of the problem. This idea, that individual responsibility directly affects the broader system, feels even more relevant now. Our choices, whether they involve reducing waste, voting, or supporting sustainable industries, directly influence the economy and ultimately our trust in leadership. Conversely, when leaders fail to guide or inspire us, our collective action wanes. Carter's framing reminds us that both individual accountability and government leadership are essential for systemic success. Perhaps the most profound insight Carter offered was his understanding of how interdependent all these forces are. He recognized that personal responsibility, governmental legitimacy, and national confidence form a non-linear system. Neglect in one area disrupts the entire web. He warned that this crisis of confidence posed a fundamental threat to American democracy. Laws and policies alone wouldn't fix the problem. Confidence in the future, in leadership, and in each other was just as critical. His words resonate deeply today as we face global challenges like misinformation and economic inequality. Individual actions, such as fact-checking or participating in elections, may seem small, yet they are foundational to societal stability, particularly when paired with government transparency and accountability. Carter believed that solving the crisis required more than technical solutions, it required unity. He called for Americans to embrace a shared identity, one rooted in collective purpose and sacrifice. He insisted that the solution to the energy crisis wasn't just technological, it was spiritual. This inclusivity is what made his speech so powerful. Carter argued that collective purpose could bridge the gap between individual effort and policy change. When people see their values reflected in government action, they're more willing to invest in shared goals. This principle has played out in modern climate activism, where grassroots movements have pushed governments toward ambitious policies. The lesson here is clear: inclusivity and collaboration are key to creating momentum for change. At its heart, Carter's speech was about harmony between individuals, governments, and the identity of the nation. He acknowledged that unity wouldn't come easily. In fact, his speech wasn't one of comfort, but of candor. He described it as not a message of happiness or reassurance, but the truth and a warning. Yet his vision was ultimately hopeful. He believed that cooperation between citizens and their leaders could restore the nation's confidence and create the kind of unity that overcomes even the gravest crises. This harmony remains elusive in many polarized societies today, but examples from around the world, like transparent policymaking that reduces divisions, show us that mutual respect between governments and citizens is still achievable. As we reflect on the life and legacy of President Carter, his Crisis of Confidence speech challenges us to confront the questions he raised with courage and integrity. How do we rebuild trust in institutions? How do we inspire both personal responsibility and collective action? And how do we create a sense of shared purpose in an age of division? Carter's vision for America was not just about energy independence or political solutions. It was about moral responsibility, systemic interdependence, and societal cohesion. His insights remind us that the path forward requires transparency, accountability, and above all, unity. Let us honor his memory not just by remembering his words, but by living out their meaning, by joining hands as he asked, and dedicating ourselves to the collective good. Together, we can renew the moral fabric of our communities, our nations, and our world.